Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and depression survivor. Welcome to your Depression Recovery channel, where each week we talk about practical tools and coping strategies for healing from depression and anxiety. Over the past 16 years, as I have worked with people suffering from anxiety and depression, one of the things that has concerned me is how many of my clients also have financial problems. You know, when I was growing up, there was a very popular song that was something like this: love and marriage, go together like a horse and carriage. Sorry about my singing. But anyway, it seems like money problems and mental illness also go together like a horse and carriage. Now, why should this be so? Well, in my experience and the experience of my clients, it seems that depression and anxiety definitely can interfere with a person's ability to make a living. Now think about it. If you're waking up in the morning with a black cloud over your head, you can hardly get out of bed, can't hardly even sit up, how are you going to make it to a 9-to-5 job? The same thing is true with early morning anxiety. You can be so anxious you can't even leave the house. So if you can't get to work and you can't work, your finances are going to go down the tube. As a result of the impact of mood disorders on finances, I have found that about 50% of the people who I work with as clients or I work with long distance in coaching are either not working themselves or they are on leave from work receiving short-term disability. Of course, this becomes a vicious cycle, right? You're not able to work, so you make less money, so you feel more depressed, so you're not able to work. Let's talk about anxiety first. Now, people with anxiety, as we all know, tend to worry a lot. They perseverate, worry about the future. Now, if you have money problems, that worry is going to be increased. So anxiety makes money problems worse, money problems makes anxiety worse. As a result, people who are suffering from anxiety disorders may be tempted to reach for the Klonopin or the Xanax more than they should. Please try to be aware of this and find other ways to cope with the anxiety that comes from worrying about money. Let's look at depression. Financial stress, lack of money, worsens depression in a number of ways. First, it lowers your self-esteem. I have a number of friends in their 50s and 60s, including myself, who instead of being able to retire, look at their friends who are retiring, who have nice pensions or nice PERS or some sort of a flow of income, and say, my God, look at them, they're relaxing, and I must be a failure because I don't have enough money compared to them. The other thing that financial stress does, lack of money, is it also increases isolation, which is a big problem with people who are depressed. Now, when you're working, when you go to work, you have a community of people that you hang out with every day, 8 hours a day. When you're not working, you don't have that community, and so you feel more isolated. In addition, lack of money increases isolation because it makes social connection outside of work more difficult. One of my group members is really down and out on a scholarship, living week to week. And she says, I used to go to meetup groups to meet people, but I can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it because when people say, well, let's go to a movie or let's go out to dinner, how do I explain that I don't even have the $10 to afford it? I'm so embarrassed, I'd rather not be there. Ironically, the one sense of connection that this woman does have is her cat, beloved cat, 15 years old, but the cat now has kidney failure and has to be treated with a lot of money, or costs a lot of money to treat the cat. And of course, now she has to make a choice. Do I keep the cat and pay for the cat and, kind of spend my money, but at least have that source of love, or do I let the cat die and go into a profound grief reaction, which of course worsens depression? That's a really hard choice. No one should have to make these kinds of choices. But for people with depression and anxiety, they're an all too common occurrence. Here's one last example. Exercise, as we know, is one of the best things you can do to alleviate depression. But many of my clients don't even have enough money to go to the gym. So the very thing they need, the exercise at the gym, they can't afford. So what's the solution to all this? Well, the first thing to do is, if you can get your anxiety and depression treated, and if you start to feel better, you'll be able to work. But there's a catch-22. When you're not working, in this culture at least, you don't have health insurance. So if you don't have health insurance, how are you going to be able to afford mental health treatment? Because psychiatrists cost $150 to $220 an hour, therapists cost $80 to $120 an hour, and then, of course, there's the cost of medication. Here's a story from my own life that illustrates the problem of getting mental health treatment when you don't have insurance. In September of 2015, I was probably at my lowest point. Actually, my lowest point was December, right before I went to the hospital, but I was pretty down. My psychiatrist at the time was a really young guy. He was hip on all the new medications, and the new medication had just come out that he said would help me and would help me quickly. It was called Latuda, Latuda, I think. Anyway, he wrote me a prescription. I happily jogged down to the pharmacy, turned it in, and said, wow, maybe there's some hope after all. I waited, and finally the person filled the prescription, brought me the pills, and said, that'll be $1,000 for a month's supply. What? Haven't you even checked with my insurance? I said, we have. This is after the insurance discount. So there was no way I was going to be able to afford to take that medication, and so my depression lasted a couple of more months before I had to go into the hospital and get ECT. Fortunately, there is something you can do about this high cost of mental health treatment, and here in Portland, we do have a number of community mental health clinics, low-cost clinics like Lutheran Community Services, Catholic Family Services, Jewish Family Services, where people can get very low-cost treatment and with some really good psychiatrists and counselors. Hopefully in your city, you've got something like this. Then the other thing I've noticed, it's happened to me and some of my friends and some of my clients, is that psychiatrists can give you samples of free samples of prescription medications that have just come out and are very costly, and can often do this for months at a time, and eventually maybe switch you to another medication that's lower cost or generic. For example, I take amitriptyline for sleep and only costs me $4 a month. Then some drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, offer what are called prescription assistance programs for people who are in financial need. What you need to qualify is to get a doctor's consent, have the doctor write a letter, and fill out some forms to show that you're financially in need. And if that happens, the drug company will actually send free medication to the doctor to give to you. Finally, if you can document that disabling effects of anxiety and depression make it impossible for you to work, you might be eligible for something called SSD, which is Social Security Disability Income, or SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. If the Social Security Administration deems that you are eligible for SSD or SSI, you'll get a monthly check, and you'll get Medicare, which is essentially free health insurance, which will pay for in-hospital stays and some outpatient care if you go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a social worker. Although the income from SSD and SSI can be quite modest, most people get along with it. The problem is that it's being more and more difficult to apply for these benefits because more and more people are applying for them, and they're cutting back on the Social Security Administration, so there's less workers to process the claims. This means that only 1/3 of the people who initially apply are approved, and although you can appeal, it can take 1 to 2 years for that appeal to be considered. Meanwhile, you have to figure out how to survive while you're waiting for the government's decision. In talking about the many financial challenges faced by people with anxiety and depression, I hope I didn't sound too grim. If you have any ideas or solutions or suggestions about how to improve this, please leave them in the comments section. I'd like to hear from you, or you can email me, douglasbloch@gmail.com. This has been Douglas Bloch. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you want to learn more about my work during the closing credits, you can click on my photo. You'll be taken to the YouTube channel where you can subscribe. If you click on the book Healing from Depression, you'll be taken to the website. And if you click on the videos, you'll be able to watch those. And until we meet again, I wish you the best in your mental health recovery. Thank you.